In this video, we're looking at a home in the Ozarks outside of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. This is the Ozarks Strangest Dwelling, listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. And you're going to enjoy this today.
Hi, I'm Bowtie Dave.
Hello, I'm Bowtie David. This is Bowtie Life, and we're going to look at some very interesting stories on this short journey over the Ozarks Strangest Dwelling, QUIGLEY'S Castle. And it's a story of determination and having a dream that's just very inspiring to me. And I'm just anxious to share this with you and show you some of the things in this garden which you're not going to believe. Now, first off, this garden was started in the 1940s, so there's a lot of history here. Actually, it's just over 80 years since this was started, and it still lives on today in the same family. And I want to just show you some of the things and tell you a little bit about the history of this place.
Now, in the second part of this tour, we're going to go inside this house, which is going to blow your mind. I want you to notice there's trees up in there. Now, this is a thing that is, in my opinion, ahead of its time, and very inspirational for me. It's coming through places like this that inspired me to have houseplants as much as I have and love them as much as I have. But we're going to look first in the gardens and see some of the history that's going on out here and what has been built over many, many years. Elise Quigley, she was born in 1910, about early 1940s. One day she told her husband she wanted a new house. And her husband said, okay, well, we'll take some time and build it, and maybe in 5 or 10 years we'll have a new house. Well, he went off to work in one June morning in 1943, and Elise Quigley gathered her children together, 5 of them, and said, okay, kids, today we're going to be tearing down our house. And they tore down, yes, you heard me, they tore down their house that day. And when Mr. Quigley came home, Albert, she informed him that we are now living in the chicken house. And they lived in that chicken house for 3 years while they built their home. And that's going to be the teaser for this home right here, because there is a lot of uniqueness to this place that I just think you're going to be so inspired by. And you can visit this too about April through October, and you can stop by between something like 10 o'clock in the morning and into the afternoon. But I'll put the times here on the screen so you can know for sure. It's really a neat place to visit if you're in the area. Now, there's a lot to do in Eureka Springs. You can go to the Turpentine Creek Wildlife Refuge. You can go to downtown historic Eureka Springs. There's places and things to do. There's music, good Ozark music all over the place. This was the first, believe it or not, this was the first tourist town in the area back in the late 1800s, and they started designing things in here way back then. So by the time Elise Quigley came along in 1943 and tore down her house, can you believe it, people were looking for something new in this area.
Rather than listening to me drone on about this, I'd like to introduce to you Gabby, the member of the family who you will see when you stop by QUIGLEY'S Castle in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, on your next visit to Northwest Arkansas or Southwest Missouri.
Elise Fioravanti was my great-grandmother, and she is the one who did all of the rock work that you'll see. She started to collect her rocks when she was about 9 years old, walking along the creek beds to school. When she was 18 in 1928, she married my great-grandfather, Albert Quigley, and they moved to this spot on his family's farm where a lumber shack used to sit. Now, he was the type of fellow that he brought all of her rocks here by the wagon load, and he promised her he'd build her a house with the lumber off the farm. So in 1943, Elise designed this house to bring nature indoors. She designed it so that her plants could grow from the ground up to the second floor ceiling on 3 sides of the house. Now her designs called for 32 window spaces, 28 large. But this was right in the middle of World War II, so the glass was rationed. Albert and Elise began to argue about the timing of building the house. Albert wanted to wait until the war was over and all the glass was readily available. That, of course, was not the answer that Elise wanted. She'd already been waiting for about 15 years of marriage to get a house like he had promised, and by that point Albert did have all the lumber ready, and Elise was worried that the wood would warp waiting for the war to end. So one day when Albert went off to work, Elise and their 5 children tore the old shack down and moved them into their empty chicken house so that they'd have to start the work on this one. It took them only 6 months to get up the wooden structure. Once it was finished, the family moved in and lived in this house for about 3 years without all of the glass. They would put flour sack material in layers over any of the remaining holes, and that would keep out the cold. During that time is when Elise rocked the outside of the house. Albert made her some scaffolding so that she could reach the top, and she'd place her rocks up a row a day. You can see the rectangle pattern on the front, where she would take her smaller rocks and form them into flat bricks, and then place those bricks upon the house. By the end of the 3 years after the war was over and the last piece of glass was finally installed, Elise had all 4 sides completely rocked. Now back over here is one of the first rock projects that Elise did. It is a little bench and chair area she made for her children to picnic on in the early 1930s. The long flower pot right in the front is made from an old Little Red Flyers wagon bed. She liked to use a base for everything she made, and she found that the mixture of 3 parts sand, 2 parts cement worked well for her creations. So she continued to use that mixture to create over 100 different rock structures or pots throughout the next 50 years to complement her garden of a variety of flowering plants and trees. Now Elise did not drive, so Albert took her anywhere she went to collect in his old little Willie's Jeep. And while she was picking up rocks, he would collect the bottles that washed down along the creek beds. When he suddenly passed away in 1972 at just 66 years old, Elise put his bottle collection together as bottle trees, and there are about 10 remaining bottle trees in the garden. Later in her life, especially after people had already been coming through paying an admission fee, Elise began to order rocks, seashells, and coral from Gem and Mineral magazines. She especially liked to order the bright colored stones because Arkansas doesn't have any colored rocks. She continued collecting and creating until her death in 1984 at the age of 74.
I've long thought that Elise was an amazing person with a strong dream that drove her throughout her life and created this very interesting place. All the stonework here you can see at Quigley's Castle in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, where it's on the south side of town, just up from Turpentine Creek, in fact. I hope you can make time to visit the next time you're in this part of the country. Stop in and see my old friends and just take a look around. It's very interesting and it's very inspiring to see what a dream can do. This is Bowtie David, Bowtie Life. I hope you enjoyed this tour. We don't normally do videos like this having to do with travel, but we always like to stick some videos on the garden in our lineup, and this is just one of my favorites. If you've watched any of my garden tours, you know how much I love the chaos gardening, and this is, granted, a bit neater than mine, but it's certainly the direction that I like to go. Thank you for subscribing. Please keep an eye out for more videos. We have another garden coming up here in about a month or 2, and I'm excited to show you that garden. Please subscribe. For those of you who have subscribed, I thank you. You have made Bowtie Life what it is today. Y'all have a blessed day.